Okay, so we are now ready to edit our bracketed photos. We are in Photoshop, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up our images into the HDR Pro. To do that, we go to File, and we're going to go to Automate, and then to Merge to HDR Pro. It's going to bring up our Merge to HDR Pro dialog box, and we're going to click on the browse icon here, and we're going to select our images. So here are 5 images that I've selected that have been bracketed, and then we click on OK. It will take just a moment for this to load up. It's kind of running through its process right now. One of the key things, and we'll get to this in just a moment, is understanding that a HDR image, a high dynamic range image, allows you to see the highlights and the lowlights and the midtones. We'll come back to the histogram in just a moment here. So now that we are in the HDR Pro dialog box, we have some options. And we can see our bracketed images on the bottom here. And the first thing we can do is you can play with the presets. We have a bunch to choose from. And you can even get some more plugins from other places. These are just the base ones that come with Photoshop. And you kind of see what some of them do. So if we click on photorealistic, kind of gives that color there. Let's go to surrealistic, because we want to create something that's just a little different than some of the other stuff that we've seen. So we're going to click on the remove ghost option here, because there was that overlay you saw there before. So this was the before. It had some ripples in the water which were causing some weird effects here. So we're going to remove the ghost, and we have a totally different looking image here. From here, we get to play a little bit. We can actually go in and use these sliders to change some things. So if we move the radius slider, you'll see that this is going to kind of add some haloing effect on our horizon here. We don't want that, so I'm going to kick it back up. You can see what the different options do. Edge smoothness, that's good. We like that. Most of the time, your gamma is going to do a pretty good job, but you can see if we slide it to the left how it kind of changes the look of the image. So it gives you some control, and these sliders are just kind of fun to play with. And then, so let's bring the gamma down. We're going to bring the exposure up, right up just a little bit. There we go. And you play with like the highlights. You can see how it changes just the look of your image a little bit. And since this is a landscape image, I'm going to add a little more saturation to it, because there are no people in it, and see if it can bring out some more colors in the skies and things like that. And you can even go in and adjust your curves and see what some of the different things you do. So you want more of the tones, you can go that way. But we'll just go back to the default for now. Alright, so back to where we were. Ghosting. We're going to add a little more, brighten it up a little bit, and turn on edge smoothness. Needless to say, this image looks a whole lot different than the original. Once you've played with these sliders a little bit and you kind of decided that this is how I want my base image to start with, click OK, and it's going to actually open up the image into Photoshop where we can do a little more tweaking. So I'm going to open up the original image from Lightroom so we can look at the histogram and kind of compare a little bit. So let's do that first. Go back to Lightroom. Here is our base image. The camera's attempt at a well-exposed image. So we're just going to pop that into Photoshop. Command E was the keyboard shortcut there. Okay, now that we are back in Photoshop, we have our base image here. There we go. Okay, so between the two images, in fact, we're just going to drop this one on top of this one so we can kind of compare apples to apples here. Okay, so we can see on this layer here that you'll notice that in our histogram here that we have a lot in the lighter area here. So that's mainly coming from the sky and the dock here. And these are called our highlights, our whites, and then on this end of the spectrum we have our blacks, and these areas in the middle are called your midtones. And the difference is that when we're able to see all of these different areas through our eyes, and then an HDR image allows you to actually see that. So you can actually see that represented really well here. We have spikes in our dark areas, we have spikes in our, our white areas, our dark areas, and then we also have some spikes in our midtones. So we get a much better realistic view of what the image looks like, and more high dynamic range. That's where that term comes from. So that's really the purpose of that. And to really kind of demonstrate this, we're going to actually cut this image in half. So we're going to grab our rectangular marquee tool there, turn this layer back on, and I'm just going to click delete and then Command D to deselect, so you can really see the SDR side. SDR. Let's choose a color font that pops, so we'll just go with the default black here. And let's choose a better font to go with that. That's our SDR. I think you can go bigger than that. So by highlighting the font size there, you can get an idea of what that looks like. So there's our SDR. And then we'll grab our HDR. And there you go. So that's pretty much the difference between an HDR image and an SDR image. This is what your camera normally can do. The HDR definitely gives you a lot more control and allows you to see those different levels. All right, folks, what you're going to do from here is you're going to save your image as a JPEG. So File, Save As. You're going to be completing 10 images like this one. And we'll call this one Doc HDR. And the date, which is 04/17/2019, and your initials. And you can save this as a Photoshop document for your own records, but what you will be turning in is a JPEG. So save it as a JPEG, and then save it to a place where you can find it. I'm going to drop it back into the folder with the source file. And then when your JPEG options come up, make sure that you choose quality 12 and click OK. And there you have it, folks. That's how you do it. So let's go take a look at our final product here. If we go to our folder here, HDR2, right there, we can see our final image demonstrating standard dynamic range versus high dynamic range. Thanks for watching, folks. If you have any questions, please email me or text me, and I'll be happy to take care for that. It's at jbyrne@topamail.com. Make sure to like this video and subscribe and ring that bell. Have a great day.